release of Armored Core 6, I decided today I wanted to take a look at a bunch of different mech games and rank them. And of course, these aren't all mech games because that's about a million, but I picked some that I played, and as you can see, we're looking at it, I picked certain pictures for them, but we're going to talk about the series in general. So for example, I have Gundam on there, Assault Breaker 2, but I'm going to talk about all the Gundam games and how they kind of accumulated into what I think about the series itself in video game terms. And of course, we have some big ones on here, as you could probably tell as we're looking through this, and I really just wanted to get into this because with Armored Core 6, it has been a while since we had a big profile mech game. And yeah, let's jump into what I think are mech games worth playing and some that could go into the worst category. And as you can see, if you haven't watched Gundam, specifically G Gundam, my top ranking is Burning Finger.
Erupting Burning Finger!
That's right, that little beauty right there, that's why it's up there. It's the greatest thing ever to be created. Don't even judge it. But next up would be a mech's fan's dream, which is pretty much almost the best you can be, just not quite as high as Burning Finger, baby. Then it's a fun, if a bit clunky experience, which usually means that it has good parts, but it has some bad parts in the overall series. A rusty game means rusty. It's not really that fun. It works, it's serviceable, but it's just not fun to play too much. And sell this for parts means this shit should be in the trash. And obviously a lot of these series I have listed here have multiple games, and some range from good to trash. So if the series is mostly good, it's probably going to end up really high up there. Or if it has a game that's in that series that I love, then it's going to be pretty high up. If it has more trash than good, well, we'll talk about it. Alright, first up is 13 Sentinels. Now this might be the newest game in this line as I'm looking at it. And this one is excellent. I played it last year and I was kind of blown away. Now the mech feature isn't prominent in terms of the combat. It's basically you just see these little almost like 3D, 2D type graphics going on with the moving mechs around, and kind of it's a defense tower type game going on. So that some people might be like, but if you really enjoy the story, which the story is really good, and there's a lot of time traveling, a lot of summoning your robots to protect people, a lot of futuristic settings mixed with modern settings, and then even past settings. I love this game, and I love the aesthetic to it. I love the way the mechs look in this game. I just overall love the feel of this game. While the gameplay might not be up to par with some of these other series in terms of like using the mech, I still think this is a mech game. It has a lot of focus based on these robots, and yeah, it's really good. It's not as high as Burning Finger just because, like I said, the gameplay isn't super focused on the mechs, and it is, but it's tower defense. You don't really get the feel of a heavy mech in there. But overall, just the overall package and the look and tone of this game, it's going in a mech fan's dream. So Transformers is a long-running series. I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to count some of the tie-ins from like TV shows and movies because, listen, movie games aren't very good usually. And if you have not really played video games till recently, and say the last 8 years, you don't really know what movie games are because they don't release them like they used to. But back in the day, every single blockbuster pretty much had one of these trashy ass games that were put together in like a year. And Transformers had that too, though those weren't as bad as the others. They were still pretty bad though and rushed. Fall of Cybertron was the first like move into making legitimately good Transformer games, in my opinion. There were some others that were based on like Beast Wars, and I think there was a PS2 one that was pretty solid I remember playing, but this one was the real thing. Fall of Cybertron and War for Cybertron, these are my favorite Transformer games, and I just think they're great third-person shooters in general. Really fun online, which is something that you don't always get. On top of that, they did make a fighting Transformers game that came out not too long ago, and kind of also a third-person, like, I don't want to say beat 'em up, but it was more like a Devil May Cry light. That was also pretty good. So overall, Transformers has had some really good games, and recently they've been on a roll. You get it? On a roll, like, let's roll. Just gonna shut my fucking mouth, and I'm gonna put that in a really high mechs fan dream because I think for most people, they are surprised that Transformers has that many good games. Alright, so Armored Core. This is definitely a series I grew up with, which has, you know, a place in my heart. I really enjoyed some of them a lot, especially Armored Core 3 was a big one for me. Armored Core 4 was pretty big, but I didn't play it as much. And honestly, I can't remember Armored Core 5. That sounds bad. Now, Armored Core 6 looks really good from the ratings that I've seen online. It is very favorable, so I'm actually excited to try that one out down the line. Armored Core definitely has the nitty-gritty of feeling like you're in a mech, but one thing that it has that some of these other series don't have is the amount of detail of building the mech. People love that almost as much as they love fighting in a mech. I personally do like that feature. I think it is cool. It sets it apart from some of these series here. So far, both of those series I talked about did not have customization mech. So that is pretty cool. I like that. I think the overall gameplay is tight and works well with most of the Armored Core. But I do feel like it's more of a multiplayer experience. Now, there are single players in these games, and the new one apparently has a pretty good single player, which is exciting. But the multiplayer is kind of what it's known for after a while, and some of the other games on this list do as well. But yeah, I enjoyed Armored Core pretty well. It's not my favorite series. I'm not super big into the building of the robots, because sometimes that takes longer than the fight. But overall, from the ones that I played, which is 3, 4. I think I played 2 as well back in the day. And then I don't remember 5, so I don't remember if that was good. And 6 looks pretty good. I'm going to say that it's a really fun, if bit clunky experience in my opinion, because I'm not big into the customization in this game, but I feel like some would love that part of it. So that's going to go in a fun, if bit clunky experience, just for the fact that I'm not a huge fan of the customization. Alright, next up we're going to talk about Front Mission. Now, Front Mission, let me tell you a little story about Front Mission. This series having a little seizure because it's such an impact on me as a young kid. So Front Mission 3 was the first big mech game I played on PS1, I believe. And it changed everything for me in terms of mechs. It got me into the mech genre, really. Like, I liked Gundam on the show and stuff, but Front Mission was like the first video game mech game I played, and I was blown away with Front Mission 3. It was just so freaking fun. The actual strategy of moving mechs around the board and trying to defend the city or take down other mechs and survive. You can get out of the mech and try to make them run away and get into a different mech. Things like that was just so insane to me back then. And then Front Mission 4 came out, and it was okay. It was not as good. It felt more on rails. Like, if you did one thing wrong, that's it. You lose the mission. That I didn't like. But it was still solid. It still had that heart. And then Front Mission Evolved came out. And that fucked up the series. It was a shitty ass... Well, I don't want to say shitty ass, but it was a poor attempt at being like Armored Core instead of focusing on the strategy RPG aspect that Front Mission built upon. So that really just pissed me off. Otherwise, if I don't count that game, replaying, playing 1 the other day, the remake, I guess you can say, a remastered, very fun, but 3 is absolutely one of the best games ever, and 4 was good. For that alone, I mean, it's hard to judge this normally. I want to put in Burning Figure for 3 alone, but 1 definitely feels a little bit aged, and 4 wasn't that great, but Evolved really fucked it up for me. So I'm going to put it in a Mech's fan stream, but I'm going to put it behind these 2 because I feel like it needs the comeback. It needs the Front Mission, apparently 6, because 5 came out only in Japan, that we need and deserve. So I put Gundam here, Assault Breaker 2, but really... I'm counting the whole Gundam series, and Gundam's probably the longest running series of all these. And I have a lot of fond memories with some Gundam series. See, Gundam, for me, started more on the PS2, but I did enjoy PS1 games as well, just including that right there. It was a fighting game, but I was a big Gundam Wing fan, so it really resonated with me. But then I really did enjoy some of the other Gundam games, like Journey. I also enjoyed the Gundam Dynasty Warriors games a lot, played a ton of them. So Gundam really does hold a pretty good spot in my heart as fun games. However, they do have some really trash ass games, and that's the problem. I think I haven't played a good Gundam game in like 10 years. Like, that's how long it feels. I don't know if it's really that long. It might be. I would have to check my reviews on when I last played Gundam Wing Dynasty Warriors 3. But holy shit, it's been a long time because I just haven't had the urge to play a Gundam game because I've never heard anything good about Gundam games in like 10 years. And that's a shame because Gundam is a franchise title, flagship title, one of the most known animes in the world. And we don't have a freaking game that's worth playing. What the fuck? So yeah, I think I'm going to have to put the Gundam series as a whole in the Rusty games, because while I thought they had good games back in the day, they haven't had a single fucking good game in like 10 years. Like, what is happening? Alright, Lost Planet. Fuck. If there's a game that encapsulates the fact of disappointment for me, that's Lost Planet. Lost Planet was everything I wanted in the game, I thought. Like, I was expecting, like, Monster Hunter with robots and, like, the snow setting and the futuristic feel. And that's not what I got. Now, I got a little bit more in Lost Planet 2, but Lost Planet 1 was not. And Lost Planet 1 has pretty awful storytelling. It's up there with some of the worst. Graphics are good. Combat's okay. But this game just felt like every step that it took towards something interesting and cool, it took like 3 steps back to make it not fun to play. The missions weren't fun. The story wasn't fun. The characters sucked. Just overall, this is... Yeah, I'm going to put it for sell this for parts because I really was disappointed as hell with Lost Planet 1. And Lost Planet 2 was okay, but damn did I get bored like, I don't know, like 3 hours in. It was just so repetitive. Alright, so we got MechWarrior. Now, I played this a lot back on the PC when I was younger. And it's always been good, but not great. I don't really have much to say to this. This is another heavy customization game, similar to Armored Core, though I feel Armored Core is the better of the two. Armored Core is definitely more fun to play, in my opinion. MechWarrior tries to be a little bit more realistic. But hey, we don't have fucking robots that are Gundam size in real life, so I don't really care about the realistic feature. Especially in MechWarrior, where it's just not really that fun to play. But yeah, overall, it's decent. Has a lot of customization. It's a long-running series that obviously does well for the fans. But I recently tried the newest one, 5. And I made me play like 3 hours. I was like, this isn't for me. So I think it's a rusty game in my opinion. I know some people love this series, and if you do, that's great. But I feel like this series never really worked for me. Alright, so Zone of the Enders. Or Zone of the Enders. Enders? Zone of the Enders. Whatever. Kojima's robot game. Well, I guess you could count Metal Gear Solid, but you don't really go in a robot that much. So anyway, I really love these games. Very surprisingly dark, especially I played it very young, the first one, and like your whole friends get slaughtered in like the first like 15 minutes. I'm just like, oh shit. And the first game is pretty much like a kind of a kid who's on the verge of having a nervous breakdown, losing himself, and going a little bit insane. And then you have to kind of build up this relationship with him and his mecha AI robot. And it was really fun. 2, the story goes even more anime feel, but holy shit is the combat fucking beautiful. I love the second game's combat. It's quick, it's fast paced, it looks great. It's kind of like an on-rail shooter sometimes, how it feels, but the way you fight and attack, it just feels so quick. It's almost like combining the anime feel of like super fights mixed with mecha robots. So, for the story alone in 1, I absolutely love it. And I like 2 story a lot, just not as much as 1. And then they had a Game Boy game that was pretty good, too. So, yeah, these games kind of hold this really, really special place in my heart as games I replayed a lot as a kid. And I replayed them recently about 5 years ago or 4 years ago when they had that collection come out. And I think they still hold up. So, yeah, I'm going to put these in... probably my rare burning finger, because I think both games are quality made, good shit, and we really need a third one. Please, come on, let's get it, come on. Alright, so Rad, I don't know if you guys remember this game. I might be the only one who's played this fucking game, but basically this game was a character who had a controller, like us, but he had to be near the robot to control the robot. So he was controlling the robot while you were controlling him. And it was some trippy shit. But it was really fun. It was cool because you got to see the fights from the point of the view of the guy controlling the robot from the outside. It was something new. I don't know any other series that really do something like this. And for the idea alone, I thought it was really interesting. The funness of using a robot to go around the city to fight big kaiju and other robots and shit like that was really something different. Saying that, it was a clunky game. I haven't played it since PS2 days, but I remember it being clunky then, so I can only imagine now it's even more clunky. So I don't know if it would hold up too well nowadays, but the idea itself is extraordinary. I wish we'd get a game that kind of tried to do that modernize. So for that, I'm going to put in a fun but clunky experience, because I remember even back then I loving it, but I was like, wow, these controllers, something else. And I would love to try it again one day, but just a modernized, better version. Alright, so Steel Battalion. This game wanted to sell you a fucking Gundam-like scenario. Basically, you could buy this whole big-ass controller and be in the cockpit. Was it good? Well, yeah, it was pretty good. That was the thing. If you could spend the money on this controller and stuff, it was a pretty fun game. I only played it for a little bit because I didn't buy it. My friend bought it, so I got to play at his house when I was a kid, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was really unique and different, and the gameplay itself was pretty good. If you want the most realistic experience to mechs, this is it. And like I said before, it's kind of silly that we don't really have mechs, so we don't know how real these would be, but this felt pretty good. And this was back in the day in like early 2000s, so if I'm saying it was good then, it did some really interesting things. Saying that, there's really only the one game as far as I know, and it was good, but that was it. It never built into a franchise. I really wish we expanded on these controllers, make them more interesting, and using them different ways. And with technology nowadays, we could do so many cool fucking things, and we kind of just let it drift to the side. So as a series, it's disappointing. As a game itself, it really was a solid game, aimed to be kind of like a simulator for being in a mech. So I think that's interesting. Saying that, I don't know if I would have played it much if I bought it, because after the maybe 4 or 5 hours I played, I was kind of like, okay, this is cool, but it doesn't have the flashiness of other mech games. So saying that, I'm going to put Steel Battalion in a fun, if clunky, experience. Kind of what's similar with Armored Core is like, these games are well crafted, well made. Armored Core gives you the awesome factor of creating different armor and different weapons and building your mech, whereas Steel Battalion makes you feel like you're in a mech, but neither of them have like the story I want, or the characters, or the tone, or the atmosphere that the games above it on my list do have. Alright, and my last game is Titanfall. So there's only 2 games. I don't think we're ever going to get a third, unfortunately. But I enjoy Titanfall 1 and 2. Titanfall 1 was a fun multiplayer experience, really solid, really good, very quick pace. Didn't blow me away, but it was really a good game. Titanfall 2's single player was fucking fantastic. It was super fun, super short, but very quickly paced, never boring. And the combat for the mech stuff got only better, and the combat for just the regular running and shooting felt great. So yeah, the single player really impressed me, and that's what kind of put Titanfall 2 and the whole series in general into a higher ranking for me. But overall, I think it's a really polished, really well-crafted game with a really nice hybrid mix of shooting and groundwork mixed with mech that you don't really get too much. So for that, I'm going to put it in a mechs fan's dream. And that is my list. Like I said, I don't have every single mech game, obviously. There's a whole bunch of series I left out. Some I never played, so I'm saying that as well. But these are my rankings. This is actually how I would put them in order too, probably. I might put Rad even ahead just because it kind of stuck with me. But yeah, I would say this is the correct order for me in terms of how much I enjoyed these games and the overall series. Like I said, the only one I really think is a bad one is Lost Planet. It does not age well. I played it again like 4 years ago, and I absolutely did not like it. I think I liked it a little bit more when it came out, but not so much now. But these two, like I said, Gundam has a lot more garbage than it does good, and it hasn't had a good game in so long that I can't possibly put it higher. I just can't. And MechWarrior, I think, is a personal one for me, just opinionated. I just never really can get into this series all that much, other than I think they're okay. But all the others I enjoyed to some level, even the weakest, like Steel Battalion on that list, I still enjoyed. But as they went up, they really started to grow on me as more and more and more. And yeah, I would say I guess Zone of the Enders would be my favorite mech series, and for good reason. There's only 2 of them, but they're both really good, and that's something that most of these series don't have. So, that's my list. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, let me know. What are some of your favorite mech games? There's quite a few, obviously, from my list, but I'm sure you can name some that I didn't put on here. And then also, are you picking up Armored Core 6? I definitely am interested, but I don't know if I'm going to pick it up at launch. I got still a lot of other stuff in play. But I would love to hear what you guys are doing. I hope you enjoyed this list. If you did, hit the like button. If you love this list, hit that subscribe button. I got more coming. And everybody else, have a wonderful Mecha Day? Mecha, is that a thing? No. Stop talking. Stop talking.